Hello, everyone. I am Violet Lee, and some people know me as a Tai Chi examiner. And today I am very, very delighted to have the opportunity to interview and Professor Evan Thompson. And he is a distinguished writer and professor of philosophy at the University of British Columbia, located in Vancouver, Canada. I guess many of you figured that out. And Professor Thompson has made significant contributions in the field of cognitive science, philosophy of mind, phenomenology. Yes, that's a difficult word for me. And cross-cultural philosophies, establishing himself as a leading visionary in these fields. And moreover, he's a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, which is a prestigious recognition of his academic achievements. And he is also an esteemed author of several groundbreaking books, and including The Embodied Mind, and Cognitive Science and Human Experience with Francisco Valera and Eleanor Roach, and that was published by MIT in 1991. Color Vision, a study in cognitive science and philosophy of perception. That sounds so interesting. And then later, Mind in Life, Biology, Phenomenology, and the Science of Mind. Very intriguing, right? And Waking, Dreaming, Being, Self and Consciousness in Neuroscience, Meditation, and Philosophy. And then when I learned about these things, I thought, wow, that's very, very cool. And self is not a thing, but a process. That's a lot to chew on and a lot to think about it. And that it was published by Columbia University in 2015. And his most recent work, Why I Am Not a Buddhist. And everybody, please don't be, how shall I say, fooled by the title. It doesn't mean he's not a Buddhist at all, or he doesn't believe Buddhism, but I think he brought a very, very good point about what Buddhism is and Buddhism is not. And if anybody's interested in the philosophy or the religion of the Buddhism, I think it's definitely a good read. Evan earned his bachelor degree in Asian study from Amherst University and completed his PhD degree in philosophy at the University of Toronto. He held a Canada Research Chair in Cognitive Science and Embodied Mind at York University, and later served as a professor of philosophy at the University of Toronto. In 2014, he was a visiting professor at the Center of Buddhist Studies at the University of California, Berkeley. And he also, oh my God, I ran out of breath just reading his short bio. Remember, this is only a short version. And okay, he also held many visiting appointments at universities in Paris, Copenhagen, and Boulder. And in 2021, he was elected as a president of a Pacific division of the American Philosophical Association. Evan was also a co-director for 2 national endowments for the humanities summer institute, namely self-knowledge in Eastern and Western philosophies, and investigating consciousness, Buddhism, and contemporary philosophical perspectives. And additionally, he served on the planning committee of the Mind and Life Institute for many years. Some of you, if you're into the so-called mind body and that area, you're probably familiar with the Mind and Life Institute. And Professor Evan Thomas, welcome to this interview. And you have accomplished so much, and I'm almost out of breath by reading this short bio. And now, without further ado, and let's welcome and Professor Thompson. Okay.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you very much.
you have written so many articles aside to the books, and you call it your blog site. On your blog site, you have a little bio page, and the first page and the first things showed up was a picture of your father, and it was Francisco Valera, right? And that was very touching for me, and because a lot of time people, I guess you're very Chinese in that sense, right? I thought about your parents, and also on your website you included a very interesting picture of the Lindisfarne, and where it's a commune, and you grew up as a kid and also a teenager. And would you mind and just how should I say, and tell us a little bit about what Lindisfarne Association is, and your life there growing up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I grew up in a community. This is in the 1970s, so I was a little kid, in a community and an institute, educational institute that was founded by my father and mother, William Irwin Thompson and Gail Thompson. And the idea of the institute was to bring together scientists and religious teachers and philosophers and artists and people in the environmental movement to create a new kind of learning, you could say an integrated form of learning that involved the body and the mind and the spirit. And I grew up in that environment. And that was actually where I very first was introduced to Taiji Chuan. Because when I was about 11 years old, there was Taiji was taught together with yoga as part of the body-mind curriculum, you could say, for the people who would come and study at the Lindisfarne Association. And so that was when I was first really introduced to Taiji, and fell in love with it right at the very beginning, as a little kid, and always was interested in it from that point onwards. But the community was a place where many different kinds of people would come together who were really basically interested in bringing science and, you could say, spirituality together in a way that would help deal with some of the problems that we were facing then in the 20th century, and that of course we still face today, especially in environmental and you could say spiritual and environmental issues that face all of us, all human beings together on the planet. So it was an early attempt to address some of those issues, and so that was the environment I grew up in, and I was homeschooled there. And then I went from there away, to university when I was a teenager to study. But that was my background. And, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. At the age of 11, most kids, or maybe this is stereotypical thinking, say most kids were playing baseball, basketball, or soccer, and then you are doing not much movement by doing Tai Chi. And then my understanding, you were also practicing a meditation that time as
Yes,
well.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. So meditation was part of the community's daily life. There were different meditation teachers from different traditions who would live with us and who would come to give workshops and things like that. So I was introduced at a young age to different kinds of meditation. You could say Buddhist forms of meditation, Hindu forms of meditation, Christian as well. There were different teachers from different traditions living and teaching there, and so that was something also that I was introduced to at a young age. And my father was also very serious about meditation practice, mainly in the context of yoga. But I was drawn, I think, to Taiji. I was drawn to it because I felt that it was both physical, involved movement, involved training the body, but also it was very mentally demanding and required a certain kind of mental focus, and a mental focus very similar to meditation. And there was something about that I just really found very attractive, even if I couldn't have put it in those words then in the way that I would now, of course. I felt that it was special in that way, and so I was very captivated by it at a young age. I played, I was never very good at sports, but I played hockey and things like that, when I was a kid, just in the way that kids do. So it wasn't that I didn't do those things, but Taiji seemed just something unique and completely different from any other thing I had ever encountered before, and so it drew me in at that age already.
Yeah, this is so true. A lot of people look at Tai Chi, see people, especially senior, playing Tai Chi in the park. They say, that's easy, until they start learning and find, oh my God, it is really incredibly difficult. Like you said, it requires a lot of mental attention and focus, and it's good for the brain. And so I really, how shall I say, admire the environment that you grew up, and you have the access to so many great minds, so would you say, and it helped you to develop your intellectual capability, and then also your philosophical view about the work.
Definitely. I would say that even though when I was young, I wasn't maybe as disciplined in studying Taiji as I was, later when I became an adult, still that combination of physical practice and mental discipline and focus was something that I think I took with me and could rely on in the other things that I did, in terms of, going to university and studying. And I went to college because I was interested in studying Chinese language and history and philosophy. So I was an Asian studies major as an undergraduate, and so my interest in Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy had already been, you could say, fueled or sparked by Taiji. And having that as a background practice meant that my interests were always not just purely intellectual, not just purely about books, but connected to something that actually had to do with how you live your life, how you move, how you breathe, how you relate to other people, say in the context of something like push hands. So all of those things, I think, were very formative for me in giving me something to giving me a kind of framework for understanding things and to rely on in my studies. Even though I studied Taiji from, let's say, I said I was first introduced to it when I was 11, and then I studied it more seriously from the time I was about 14 to 16. And then I didn't study it for a while. I went away to college, and I didn't really do it there because there weren't really teachers there. This is the 1980s. But then I returned to it later, and it was like kind of coming home to something that I had been away from for a while, and I've done it ever since then. When I went back to it, actually, I went back to it later after I was already just becoming a professor, and then I've practiced it nonstop ever since, and it's given me a whole framework for structuring my day, for understanding in an experiential way how the mind and the body are so intimately related. And that's very important to my just very abstract intellectual work in philosophy and science. So I see it as a very central thing that's helped orient me in my life and work, definitely.
Good. And my teacher, Grandmaster Chen Zhenlei, and also many of the Tai Chi masters, and then in the literature, they all point out, say, Tai Chi Chuan, and actually, rooted in the philosophy of the Book of Changes. And it was a very, very old book, and actually many of the thinking and the strategy for warring everything and medicines of coming from the Book of Changes, and the Chinese name is I Ching. And Tai Chi Chuan is also heavily influenced by the three Chinese philosophies, and Confucianism and Buddhism, and also Taoism. When I say Buddhism and Taoism, I don't mean the religious sense. It's more in the philosophical part. And the Buddhism, especially the Zen thinking. Actually, some people say Zen thinking is very much is the what Zhuangzi was saying long time ago. Zhuangzi and Laozi, a lot of people practice Tai Chi Chuan know who Laozi is, who wrote the Dao De Jing, right? And so it's that kind of background, that kind of philosophy, and then create Tai Chi. And you as a philosopher, and you have studied so much of this. Do you agree with this statement? And can you see that as you're practicing Tai Chi, do you sense this philosophy, and in which part it represents that, or it's just all together?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, that is a huge topic from a historical and philosophical perspective. But certainly, one of the things that's very interesting about Tai Chi Chuan from, you could say, a historical philosophical perspective is the way that it understands itself as embodying in Taoism and Confucianism, especially you could say developments in Neo-Confucianism later. So in the Ming and Qing dynasties. So the very idea of Taiji, the supreme ultimate, or Wuji, the formless, you might say, the idea that movement and the differentiation of yin and yang comes out of a kind of stillness and openness. These are very philosophical concepts, but they're also very embodied concepts in terms of the actual movements of Taiji, and the understanding of how you should move from one, you could say posture is maybe not the right word because it's too static and abstract, but how you flow from one movement into the next in terms of coiling and spiraling, and the yin yang kind of symbol, and the differentiation of weight understood in terms of yin and yang, not just in the legs and in the torso, but anywhere on the body. These are very embodied practical things that are also very philosophical in their larger sense. Or to take another example, the very idea of qi, not in the sense of like qigong, the idea of a kind of felt energy, or sort of vibrational energy that you feel within the body that is related to you and the environment, or you and another person, or if you're doing partner practice. These are very philosophical concepts. They're really cosmological concepts, you could say, concepts about nature and the cosmos, but then they're embodied in a very experiential way through the physical practice and the mental practice, of course. So that's one of the amazing things about Taiji, is that it's so many things. It's philosophy and cosmology and movement and martial arts and health, and all of these things are sort of woven together. But yes, I think the ideas philosophically come from Taoism and Confucianism, especially. I would say with Buddhism, maybe there, but this is also in Taoism too, the meditation element is particularly significant. So for example, the idea that that the energy that you have in moving, in the Taiji form, that you should bring that quality of energy into, say, a standing meditation practice, and then you should bring the quality of stability of mind from standing with proper structure and alignment, and bring that into the movement practice, the way that those two things are enfolded with each other, but with an emphasis on on the mind, on a kind of open, stable awareness, that's a very meditative idea. And of course in Zen or Chan, that's central.
Yes, thank you so much for the explanation. That's really profound. And it also just came to my mind. And in Tai Chi Chuan, especially twist or push hands. And for folks, if you haven't tried push hand, it's a two-person drill. And so it's different than the other martial arts, so-called sparring. And in push hand, and it focuses so-called 舍己从人. Means you're giving up yourself and you follow the other person. And then in that way, and at least for me, and when I practiced that one, and I thought about the Zen or maybe Buddhism, it was talking about let go of your ego, right? Let go of yourself. And that's how it come to me, but I may not interpret it correctly. And how should I say? I'm so glad that you mentioned about the embodied part, because when I was first trying to understanding, you're talking on embodied mind, and I got a little bit, but it's kind of difficult and for me to fully understand. And then you just talk about the embodied and in the Tai Chi Chuan practice. That really helps me to connect the dots. That's great. Thank you so much. And what I was going to say is, since we talk so much about the Tai Chi and Qigong, we might as well just ask you, how many Tai Chi styles and Qigong you have learned so far, and then which one is your favorite?
Yeah. So the first, mostly I study Yang style Tai Chi, and the first form that I learned was from a teacher, one of the very early teachers of Taiji in the United States, from China, named Da Lu, or Da Liu in China, in Chinese. He taught in New York City, and so he was a student of Yang Cheng Fu, and so I learned.
Are you talking about Chen Manqing?
Well, then I learned the Zheng Manqing form. So first I learned a form. He also studied with Zheng Manqing, Da Liu. So I first learned his way of doing the Yang form. This was when I was like 11 or 12. Then I really studied Zheng Manqing Taiji for a number of years, and I still practice that. And there was also a period of time. So I studied the Zheng Manqing form with students of his, of Zheng Manqing in New York City, and then also with Benjamin Low and students of Benjamin Low in San Francisco. And
Ben Low is good. Ben Low is
yeah,
good. Mm-hmm.
and especially with Lindsay Williams in Berkeley, I've studied a lot with him. He is a student of Ben Low. So I practiced that, studied and practiced that form for many years. There was a period of time when I was living in Toronto, and there was nobody who did the Zheng Manqing form there. And I learned Wu style. So I learned the Wu Jianchuan, Wu style, and practiced that for about 9 years. I don't do that anymore. I now am working with a teacher in Vancouver who also teaches both Yi Chuan and standing meditation, and he teaches Yang Tai Chi. His name is Sam Tam, and I've been working very closely with him for about 5 or 6 years now. So that's the sort of main Yang form of the Yang form that I practice now, is the way that Sam Tam teaches it. And I learned some Chen style when I was living in Toronto. Also studied a little bit of Chen style for a while, but I never really studied it that deeply. It's really the Yang form mainly that I've worked with, and now
they're all good.
Yeah,
they are good. Yeah, each one is fun also. And what you mentioned about you learn meditation, and you also talk about Tai Chi Chuan. And there's one part of the things that, I learned is that you prefer the Tai Chi Chuan standing meditation better than sitting meditation. Is there any special reason for that?
Oh, I wouldn't say that I prefer it. I would say that
Oh, okay.
I would say they're both. I do both,
Oh, okay.
but I would say that there's something special that I like about the standing meditation, especially if you lead a busy, active life where you're teaching and you have a lot of meetings and things like that, and just a lot of demands on your time. The standing meditation is very energizing in a way that is different from sitting meditation. Of course, in sitting meditation, you can maybe have a more concentrated, deep focus, because you don't have to stand and maintain a certain posture. So your posture is simplified, and so your mental focus or stability and tranquility can go maybe deeper, at least if you're a beginning meditator, not if you're very advanced. So sitting has certain qualities that are hard to get in standing, but standing has certain qualities that are very difficult to get in sitting, which basically has to do with energy flow through the body, and a way of learning how to hold your body in a energized and upright, stable, open position in relation to the world, but without using muscular tension to maintain the posture. And that's something
Yeah.
that standing is irreplaceable for. There's really no other way to learn that than through standing meditation, at least in my own experience. Yeah.
I have to admit I have a monkey mind.
Yeah.
I can never meditate for too long. Doesn't matter standing or sitting. So how long? The longest you ever did a standing meditation?
Oh, I usually practice every day about 20 minutes, and then if I have more time, maybe 45 minutes standing.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good. That's very, very good. Yeah. I think 20 minutes is my limit, and yeah. So 45 minutes. That's something I should strive for.
Yeah,
And
I can't do 45 minutes every day, just because my day is usually a little bit too busy. But sometimes, especially in the summer when I don't have to teach as much, I can take more time.
understand. Very good. And well, would you mind provide a simplified explanation of how philosophy, biology, cognitive study, neuroscience, meditation, religion, and consciousness are all related to each other?
Oh,
Because when I look at what you have accomplished, and these are all very tough, challenging area for me to have a good understanding. So I thought maybe you can help me and also help some other people like me to have a better understanding of that.
yeah. Well, that's a very big question.
I know.
But that's fine. So I would say the way that they come together for me is through understanding and investigating the nature of the mind. We have an experience of the mind from within when we are awake. Maybe we're paying attention to something, or maybe we have monkey mind and our mind wanders around. Then our experience changes if we're meditating or if we're sleeping and dreaming. So there's this way that we go through our lives with the mind changing all the time, changing the state of the kind of consciousness that one is in, or the way that attention is working, or the way that awareness is maybe more receptive or less receptive. And to understand that, you could say, phenomenon of the mind, we need to draw on a number of different kinds of things. So of course we can study the mind scientifically by studying, the body and the brain and behavior and things like cognitive function, the kinds of things that, we study in psychology and neuroscience. But if we just study the mind that way, then we won't necessarily understand the mind as it experiences itself from within, you could say. But to really study the mind as it experiences itself from within, you can't just sort of sit there and do it. You need some kind of method that involves, training your sensitivity to the mind. And so that's where something like meditation comes in, because certain kinds of meditation practices, they involve making your attention more stable, making your mind more calm, making it more quiet. And when you do those things, then you can notice things about the mind that you wouldn't see otherwise. And you can even do that when you fall asleep and when you dream. You can have, as we say in English now, you can develop mindfulness of how you fall asleep, of your dreams. You can even become aware of your dreams while you're having them. And that enables you to have a much richer understanding of the mind from within, what philosophers call phenomenology, the study of experience from the point of view of experience, you could say. And that helps bring important information to the scientific study that just looks at things from the outside. And then there are, special kinds of skills or practices like Taiji, for example, where you actually work to train and to change the way your body and mind relate to each other, the way that you, as you said, in push hands practice, abandon the self to follow the other. It's very easy to say that, but to actually understand what that means when someone is trying to, unbalance you or to put force on your body, that's a different kind of understanding. And that understanding from within is very revealing about the nature of the mind and how we fasten on to a sort of sense we have of ourself that in the context of, say, push hands practice has to do with our body as ourself. So these ideas of, what is consciousness? What is the mind? What is the self? These are the things that, for me, draw together philosophy and science and meditation, and you could say mind-body practices like Taiji.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't know, I just thought about one fiction, science fiction I read last year. It was written by Nobel laureate in literature, Kazuo Ishiguro. And the book is called Clara and the Sun. And it's talking about the robots. And of course, I was just thinking from your study, your research, and a lot of the theory, it seems a lot of things is like says embodied mind is because the outside sensory, and then with machine learning, is that possible one day robot will have not just a consciousness, also have a conscience, like in that novel? Is that even possible?
Yeah. Well, I think we're still we're still a long way away from that. I think it is possible in principle, but I don't think it's possible just by creating very very powerful forms of machine learning systems of the sort that we see like with Chat GPT and things like that. They're very, very powerful statistical processors, but they're not embodied sentient conscious beings. Could we create an embodied sentient conscious being? Well, I think maybe it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen soon. I'm not as worried about that. So some people are very worried about artificial intelligence because they think that these systems are becoming conscious. And I don't think, I'm worried about artificial intelligence, but not for that reason. I think the reasons to be worried about it is that they're just extremely powerful technologies, and we're not developing them in an ethically, responsible way. We're just letting the research, run ahead of any ethical discussion. So I do think we should be concerned for that reason. But I don't think we're likely to be developing artificial consciousness anytime soon. So my viewpoint is different from some people in that way.
Yes, definitely. I think, as you say, the responsible way to handle that, that's very, very important. And I guess they're not doing a good job. The big data has the algorithm, something's wrong. So the robot wants to, tell the New York Times reporters, you actually like me, not your wife. So,
Right.
so there is very wrong, right? And Bill Douglas and Angela Wong of Kansas City, and they founded World Tai Chi Day in 1999, and so maybe you're familiar with that. And in each year, the last April, that's the last, I should say, the Saturday, the last Saturday in each April was the so-called World Tai Chi Day. And we see millions of people, and all of the world, starting from Fiji, goes westward, and New Zealand and Australia, Japan, and go all the way around the world, and doing Tai Chi, 10 o'clock local time. Doesn't matter what their political system is, doesn't matter what their religion belief is, and their gender or their sex identification or age. They all practice together. And why do you think Tai Chi Chuan has such a global appeal, and especially from a philosophical viewpoint? Why?
Yeah. I think for the reasons that it creates community and meaning and togetherness based around health and well-being. I think this is something that in the modern world is very difficult for many people to find, especially if they're not religious. If you grow up in a religious community and you have a religious upbringing, you have that community provided for you. But if you don't have that and you're in a more secular society, or you have a more secular orientation, it becomes much harder to find things that make you feel connected to other people and connected to nature and part of a community with a practice that you can perform, to structure your day, to give you a sense of well-being. And so I think the World Tai Chi Day, global practice is a reflection of people's hunger for that, and that Tai Chi actually, does a good job of filling that. So that's how I look at it there.
Thank you very much for that perspective. And at the beginning of this interview, we talked a little bit about your father and or your parents have the foresight, and they create the
Hard to say.
Lindisfarne Association. And then you mentioned about they invited a lot of prominent and all forward thinkers, and in all different fields, in the art and in the religious spiritual field, and as well as science. And to there, and then looks like your parents and their concern is the impact from the science and the technology on humanity. And that certainly is very appreciated by me, and I think it's millions of people. And now, of course, the problem is things not going away, right? And with technology's development, it seems we are seeing more and more these potential issues. And like say in the biotechnology, we have cloning, and we have gene editing tool like CRISPR, right? And the very fabric of the life and can be changed. So that's kind of scary, right? At a change at a DNA level. And also we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence and the machine learning and the robots. And some people say, oh, robot is going to replace us altogether. And but it sounds like what you just said, as far as the robots having, how should I say, consciousness and conscience, not even near future. So, and also global warming, and I believe that was one of the concerns your dad had, and then how it's going to affect the us, right? And there's could be massive flooding, and then could be burning of our earth and to unrecognizable landscape, right? And the historian Yuval Noah Harari, and in his book and *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind*, he poses many daunting questions. He did not provide answers about the future. And so, as a philosopher, and I'm sorry. How do you perceive this?
Yeah, well, that's another big question. I would say that, yes, I think we do right now face a number of challenges. We talked about artificial intelligence. The challenge there is that the systems are incredibly powerful, and we build our own biases into them, and we do this in a way that we're not really aware of most of the time. And of course, climate change and global warming is also, a huge threat. So I see these as challenges for humanity as a whole right now. They were the kinds of challenges that very much led my parents and other people, in the 1970s to try to find alternative ways of living and alternative forms of knowledge that integrated, science and ethics and values, beyond a kind of industrial exploitation of nature, and that's very much still the challenge that we face now. I don't think there's any one straightforward, easy solution, but I think these are the things we need to have increasing consciousness about, and that we need to really work on fundamentally to try to create new frameworks of meaning and value for our existence as one species together on the planet, embedded in many other forms of life at the level of the biosphere. We need to start thinking in a way that really is reflective of that, and that's extremely challenging and difficult. And will we be successful? I'm not sure. It's very hard to say, but that's the task that's before us, definitely.
Thank you very much. My understanding, you're going to be a speaker at a conference hosted by Harvard Medical School, as well as the OSHA Center of Integration Medicine. And so this is about Tai Chi and Qigong, the science of Tai Chi and Qigong as a whole person health. And so I'm very excited about that event. And can you tell us a little bit about your topic? And thank you.
Yeah. So the conference, as you say, is about Tai Chi and Qigong as whole person health. And the first, I think, session in the beginning of the conference is on whole person science across different systems, different systems of the body, the nervous system, cardiovascular system, immune system, but also in a way that reflects an understanding of of the whole mind-body integration as a kind of system phenomenon, a holistic phenomenon. So I'm going to be speaking in that first session. And most of the conference is really about people who do research on Taiji and Qigong from a scientific or clinical perspective. But since I'm a philosopher, my job is really to kind of give a bigger picture, you could say, about the study of the mind and its relationship to the body. And so I'm going to be using the cognitive science perspective. So cognitive science is, the interdisciplinary scientific study of the mind, psychology, neuroscience, computer science, linguistics, philosophy, anthropology, all of these disciplines collaborating. That's cognitive science. So there's a development within cognitive science that says that if we really want to understand cognition, we need to understand it as fundamentally embodied, where that means that cognition isn't something that just happens in the head or in the brain. It involves the whole body in relationship to the environment. So I'm going to speak from that perspective, basically saying that that's a very important scientific perspective for understanding a practice like Taiji. And then reciprocally, from the other side, that Taiji is a very unique body-mind practice that can provide us with new kinds of perspectives and information for understanding embodied cognition. So that sort of, in very general terms, is the theme of my presentation.
Well, that sounds very, very interesting. You know what? I'm going to get a front seat and really pay attention to every word you said. And of course, some people know me, as a Tai Chi examiner. I have written more than 700 articles in this area, but this area is so profound and there's so much to learn. And not to mention, I'm kind of a nerd in the area of Tai Chi and Qigong. So definitely I want to pay attention to every word you say. And I think that would be great. And I hope I have opportunity to meet you in person. And for people out there watching this video, and the conference is in September, you can go on Harvard website, or maybe I can put a link later on here for you. But anyway, this is really, I know you're, Professor Thompson, you're very, very busy, and thank you so much for taking your valuable time and speaking with me today. I really appreciate that. And before we go, and any last word of wisdom you want to share?
And just to say thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to talk, and I look forward to meeting you at the conference. And if people are interested in the conference, then yes, I highly recommend going to the website to look at the program for the meeting.
Yes, it's a very rich program, and like Professor Thompson said at the beginning, and it's talking the whole system, and then later on, other scientists, some other scientists, they're going to present the actual study for, for you, why Tai Chi is good for your heart or good for whatever, right? And
Right.
But anyway, again, thank you so much, Professor Thompson, and nice to have you here. And I see you soon.